Hello, I'm Dave Younts, Superintendent of Schools for the Mill River School District, and I'm excited to be joined today by Grant Reynolds, who is one of our board members representing Tinmouth. This is our third installment of sharing information with you about the school district's budget development process, activities that we have in the works, and just wanting to make our public more aware of what's going on in our schools. So Grant, I'd like to ask you first, would you introduce yourself to our audience?
Hi, I'm Grant Reynolds. I'm from the little town of Tinmouth, the only member from Tinmouth. I'm a retired lawyer. I was one of the members of the original study committee that designed the Mill River Unified School District. It's been a very interesting trip for me. I wish it could continue, but I'm 83 and I don't hear too well. I went to grade school during the Second World War and high school during the Korean War, if you remember them. And I think it's time for somebody a little younger to represent Tinmouth.
Well, Grant, we are grateful to have had you, and as you mentioned, being a part of the process of helping to form our unified district. I know from working with you a lot of behind the scenes efforts and a lot of language and wordsmithing and crafting documents and articles of agreement and all those things would not have happened without you. So there are so many things that these folks don't even know that you have put into helping us build a school district, but I want to say that I'm grateful, and I know that we are as a set of schools.
Thank you.
With you, you have about a month left with us as a school board member. Are there things that you think that the public should know about these schools, or are there things that you want people to be aware of about what we're doing here?
The thing that has impressed me the most is this. Every town in Vermont has its own culture. It's different than the town 5 miles away. But often there is bad feelings between even adjacent towns. That can easily happen when you try to bring 4 towns of very different sizes together.
Sure.
It didn't happen with us. From the beginning, in the study committee, there's been a sense of fairness, of treating the small schools fairly, and of treating kids as the most important thing we had to do, and not just looking out for our own town.
Right. I think that's well put. Thank you for sharing that. So one of the things that you are very well known for, especially among your fellow board members, is your ability to explain a rather complex tax system, especially as it relates to educational taxes, in ways that make sense to lay people and people that don't necessarily follow the type of work that we do. So if I were to give you the task of trying to explain to our audience how education taxes in Vermont work and how that translates to a tax bill that someone looks at that comes in their mail, would you be willing to give that a shot?
Give it a shot is all I'm capable of doing. First, the state pays all of the town's school budget. Doesn't matter how high or low it is, whether you have Chinese immersion or whether you have barely enough to get the school certified. The state pays the bill. Well, it has to have money to pay it. Part of it comes from the school tax, but a large chunk comes from the property tax, and that's the complicated part. Basically, the homeowner property tax fundamentally is based on cost per student, which sounds very logical and probably was 30 years ago. But the number of students no longer goes up and down. It's been going steadily down. And cost doesn't go with it. It costs a certain amount to have a proper school, whether you've got X number of students or X minus 5 students. So, your property tax rate then is based on the relationship between your town's or district's cost per student and an arbitrary number created by the legislature to put enough money in the pot to pay all the bills, that is, all the budgets. If your cost per student is 1.5 times that number, then your tax rate is $1.50. Then, every town has a number called the CLA, Common Level of Appraisal. You don't have to remember that, folks. What it means is, the state knows that every town assesses property value differently. It may not have reassessed for 10 years. It may have done so last year. So it looks at the relationship between what houses were selling for and what they're appraised at, comes up with a number. That number is applied to your tax rate. If the state determines that your houses are underassessed, the tax rate, school tax rate, which is the same for everybody, will be expressed as a higher percentage. If your houses are assessed for more than they're worth, the CLA will be different. And your tax rate will appear to be less. It's not that your tax rate is really less. It's just that the state thinks that your house is not worth that much. And because they can't adjust the value of your house very well, they just adjust the tax rate, which they have a handle on.
Mhm. That makes sense to me. And I want to try to prove to you that it makes sense. I'm going to try to restate what I heard from you. Is that fair?
Okay?
And if I mess it up, I know you'll correct me. So, in a nutshell, a school board and a school district develops a budget that costs X amount of dollars. And a figure called a per pupil figure is decided, which is based on essentially roughly the number of students that we have living in the school district that would potentially attend our schools. The state is obligated to provide us a certain amount of money to meet that budget. And the way they do that is by collecting property taxes from all of the towns in the state. But sometimes there are shortfalls in terms of money, so they have to make up any gaps by making sure that the property taxes that are captured are able to pay all of the district budgets that are out there. So far, am I on?
Yeah.
All right.
That's why the legislature varies the number
Got it.
that your cost per student is compared to.
And so then the next variable piece comes from town to town. So as a school district, we develop a budget, and we have a tax rate that our budget will require, but the concept you call the CLA, which has to do with the appraised and assessed values of the homes, causes that education rate to vary in each of our towns. So depending on what properties are doing in those towns, the education rate can go up or down depending on the local dynamics.
Correct.
And that information, we haven't discussed this yet, but we also know that doesn't really become truly finalized until around June or so. So we ask folks to vote on a budget in March, but the state is not able to finalize some of those details until a little bit further down the road.
We can estimate what the tax is, but nobody knows until the state hands us a number in June what it really will be. And the state gives us honest numbers, but those are a bunch of bureaucrats. And it's the legislature that finally determines how much it's going to be.
Understood.
Now, there's one other aspect to this. Only about a third of homeowners actually pay the full tax rate. Most people pay on what's called income sensitivity, which is a fancy way of saying income tax. It's substantially less than the property tax in most cases. You get the same property tax bill as anyone else, but there's a number up in the corner that says state payment, and that's deducted from the number for your property tax. And what is that? That is the difference between the regular property tax and income tax based on somewhere around 3.5%.
Okay. So it's not as straightforward as everyone just automatically pays the same actual property tax rates.
Correct. However, they all get the same bill.
Got it.
And not everybody understands what state payment is.
Right, not everyone has that adjustment either, because there's an income dynamic that
Correct.
is individual to the actual taxpayer.
If you're well enough off, you don't get state payment.
Understood. All right. Well, Grant, your explanation, as I knew, has been helpful, and your knowledge is unparalleled, so I'm grateful for that. To the audience, I want to remind you again that we will have on our website at millriverschools.org, we will have some information about our overall budget. We will have some information available about the bond that we're requesting, and details around that. And I'd like to point out to you that coming up February 28th at 7 p.m. at Mill River Union High School in the library is our annual meeting. And at that annual meeting, the board will be talking through a number of action items it needs to address, but specifically the proposed budget that we're asking folks to vote on for town meeting day. So when you get those annual meeting reports in the mail in a few weeks, please give those a look. There's a lot of details inside. Please feel free to contact our school district office. You can call 775-3264. Once again, that's 775-3264. And we'd be happy to point you in the right direction if you have any questions or comments that you'd like us to be aware of. Grant, I'd like to give you final word on this conversation. How would you like to wrap up our dialogue today?
Dave, it has been a great pleasure to serve on the Tinmouth School Board, the study committee, and this school board, and I'm going to miss it a great deal. And I wish my successors the best of luck, and that they can continue to be a congenial, reasonable, compromising group.
Following your lead, I suspect they will. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.